Welcome back to WizNugs. We're continuing now. Things your boss won't tell you. Another thing a manager or boss is probably not going to tell you is, I am unqualified to be your manager.
Well, who's going to say that to begin with, all right?
They're not going to tell you, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before. This is my first time as a manager, and I'm going to make mistakes. Please come with me on this journey, and I will do my best to be an advocate for you and to make this job a place where we both want to be.
Yeah. There's so many things that come to play on this one. I think you have to be, first of all, you have to be in an environment where it allows for everybody to grow. Secondly, you have to have employees or people or direct reports that are willing to accept the fact that you may not know everything and are willing to work with you. And then third, you got to be that kind of person to be willing to accept that you're not infallible and you're going to make errors and you're going to have learning moments where you're like, okay, well, that probably wasn't the best way to handle this.
If you're in a cutthroat environment, expressing that level of vulnerability is probably unlikely.
Yeah.
However, if you're building a team where... Okay, so there's this funny show. It's kind of an older show called The IT Crowd.
Yes, I'm
it's
familiar.
Out of England, so they've got like a season with 5 or 6 episodes, and then that's it. And then they do 2 or 3 seasons, and then they're done.
Yep.
As opposed to the American model of 10 seasons of 25 episodes each. But early on, this lady's hired to be the manager of this IT team, and she knows nothing about computers or technology at all. And there's a team of 2 down there, and she comes in. They do not want to have a manager. She doesn't know anything about tech, and they can tell instantly. And then what it ends up turning into is she calls herself the relationship manager. She says, look, I will go to all the meetings that you don't want to go to. I will do the schmoozing and the handshaking and talking to the people so that you don't have to. And then they reach this sort of equilibrium at that point where it's like, oh, okay, that can be a role that you fill. And sometimes having an unqualified in terms of the technical is just fine for a manager because they're managing people and maybe process, but they don't have to know all the details of the individual things.
Right. It's having that representative who's going to be your defender, your lawyer, if you would, and go to these things and say, hey, my team's really busy right now. They're working on these things. This is the project name, or this is the thing that they're working on. I don't know what the heck they're doing. I have no clue. They just tell me that they're still working on this thing and they're halfway through, whatever, but I can tell you that they're busy. So I can tell you from based on what I know that they're doing, and I see that they're working. I see that they're putting out work or product that they don't have the time to be able to take on something new, but I will make sure that once we can get that time into place, that will be the first priority on our list. Because you as a developer, you don't want to have to tell people, look, I'm working on this thing you told me I need to work on. I can't take on something new at the moment.
Just someone else to go to the meetings and help set priority can be a real lifesaver. I think along with that, there's this concept of, at some time in your career, you will likely find yourself in a situation where you are being managed by somebody dumber than you.
All right.
That is a likelihood. It is almost inevitable.
Right.
And the key is, how can you help that person to succeed? Now, I'm not saying that you need to make them look amazing and give all of the credit to your good things to them, but how can you help your boss to succeed?
Right.
Thinking about this as a team effort, thinking about this in terms of, if I help them succeed, not just, quid pro quo, you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Sure.
But if your team looks good, that's good for everybody.
Right. I think of the term all boats rises, right? And
a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, that's the phrase. If you realize that there are better ways to do things, what is the right way to handle it? Is it to try to demean or make it look like you're so much more superior than everyone else around you? Or is it better to say, look, talk with your team, talk with your manager, and say, hey, I think there's a better way that we can do this thing. Here is my idea. What do you think? And then if everybody's on board, work together to implement that. And then at the end of that, everybody comes out looking like superstars. And then you all get credit, and then all boats rise in this particular case. And then you get the recognition that you think you deserve or have earned at the very minimum. And so does everybody else. Because everybody else, for the most part, wants to be successful. I can't think of anybody who goes to work and says, I can't wait to be a failure today.
But if you're also that person who's coming in and you're just frustrated because, "Oh, my boss is an idiot. They don't know anything. What are we even doing here? This is so stupid. Why do I have to listen to them?" Maybe you have better ideas. Maybe you don't. But the fact of the matter is, this is the job. If you don't like it, in a very real sense, if you're not happy at the place that you are, you might want to consider looking around.
I think having the attitude, and again, I can't tell you how to feel about things, but having the attitude of everyone around me is an idiot is not very helpful. I have heard someone else say, and I will say it in the way that I want to say it, and that's there's something to be learned from anyone that you talk to, and you should approach them that way. Expect that they have knowledge or experiences that you don't have, and it's possible that you could learn something from them. So instead of having the mentality of I'm dealing with a moron, have like I'm dealing with somebody who has an experience or knows something that I don't, and so I'm going to be extra attentive to pay attention, and when those nuggets come along, that I'll be able to hear them, understand them, and grasp them, and then employ them as needed.
That brings us to the next item on the list. Your boss is probably not going to tell you. No one knows you. There's oftentimes an expectation that good work is going to stand for itself. If I do a great job, everyone will see me and know me, and they'll know who I am because of my amazing work. Oh, you're the guy who did the thing. Oh, yeah, we love that thing. Fact of the matter is, it's about branding. It's about having those conversations and how you're selling your ideas as well. If you come in and you're the jerk who's like, "You're all idiots. You don't know what you're doing. If everyone just did what I said, things would work better." Recognize that you don't know everything, like you said. Recognize that the people around you have experience as well. When you come into a situation, treat it with some humility, treat it with a little bit of vulnerability, and just recognize you got your ideas, put them out there.
Yep.
Discuss it. Maybe it'll be the way that things go. Maybe it won't. You've put it out there.
Yep.
Build your brand by being the idea guy, maybe, but be humble about it.
Years ago in my retail life, I had a store director that came in, and I had just became a front end manager, which was the guy that was responsible for the cashiers and the courtesy clerks, scheduling and hiring and all that stuff. We opened the store up in Flagstaff, and we were sitting down in the office one day, and he says, "I'm going to tell you one of the most important things you could probably learn as manager, and that's don't come in, guns a-blazing and ready to do everything exactly your way. Take some time, observe, see what works, see what doesn't work, take notes, make notations." And then after a few weeks or a month or so of observing and seeing what works and what doesn't work and what can be improved, what's fine the way it is, then come in and start making your suggestions. I think we should change this, and here's why. I think this is perfect the way it is. I think this is something, this is an area of an improvement that we can work on to get to where we think we need it to be in order to be successful. Right? If you come in and are like, "You're idiots, you're boneheads, oh, you're stupid for doing that." If you come in that way, not only are you creating a hostile environment, but you're creating basically people who don't want to work with you because they already know that you don't care about what their position is. And maybe you don't. But if you want to be successful, you really want people to be on your side and work with you, because in reality, if you're in a larger corporation, you're going to need the support of the people that are around you. You can shine on your own. Yes, you can. But we talked about it before. You got to have certain branding. You got to be able to represent your particular way. And if your way is like, I'm going to smash down everyone I think who's an intellectual inferior, no one's going to want to work with you. No one's going to want to put you in a position of that you have to have people report to you. Why? So they can lose employees? No.
You build partnerships, and then, like you said, if you're observing and you're taking notes, point out the good things that you're seeing, because that's how you're going to get that brand to build up. I'm not saying you should lie to people or tell them anything that isn't true, but if you notice good things that are happening, tell them so. Let them know that you appreciate this and that. Something that my wife taught me from her education in education is to always start with the kind of the sandwich, a compliment, something good that they're doing, something that you noticed about, even if it's about the thing you're about to correct, and then question. Bring in the change or the criticism as a question. Is there something about this that we could do differently to make it stronger? Mm-hmm. Now you're not saying you screwed up. It's implied, I mean, to a certain extent. But if you think about it, you're teaching them the skills of how do I build a better system by questioning what the weaknesses are and how can I shore them up.
Yeah.
And then end with praise or confidence that we can reach a better solution together, and that as you put in the work, it'll get better. It'll improve. I know you got this.
I've always with my kids, and when they were growing up, when they were younger and teenagers, I wasn't the disciplinarian. Okay, I was the lecturer, and I would come in, and the first thing I would say is, "Can you explain to me the logic you used in order to make the decision that you made and the actions that you performed? I want to see if I can see it from your perspective. I may not be able to, but I want to know what the logic is. Explain to me." And of course, the response was, "Oh," because they didn't want to have to go through the lecture again, right? About being smart, making better decisions, about those kind of things, right? They would have preferred that my wife just spank them and gotten it over with, right? Quick and painful, but it's over with quickly. Yep. Mine is like, no, I need to have some self-reflection here because we're going to learn and we're going to grow and we're going to figure out how to use this as an example going forward of not repeating the behaviors.
Let's not do this again.
Yeah. Let's figure out why your logic was flawed and then be able to identify it in the future when it comes up again, because it's going to, because that's how life works. But on that note, it is very much of that mentality of like compliment when you can and often, because we both know that doesn't happen on a regular.
And you can build that culture of positivity around you, talking about building your personal brand. If you're the one that everyone feels good about, and then you apply for that promotion, all that good feeling comes with you into that decision, or with your bosses into that decision of who's going to get that spot. If it's between you and someone who's negative all the time and just brings a bad mood in, and you're the one who's building that culture of positivity, you might find that you're the one that, because now you are known, because you do have a brand of being a good person at what you're doing and at dealing with others.
Yep.
So kind of a left turn now. The next one on the list, unrelated to any of these other things, but something to be aware of. Your boss is probably not going to admit to you that they have access to read your emails, your IMs, and your web browser history. Mm-hmm. A lot of companies have software that just automatically logs things like keystrokes and stuff that you're doing on your work computer. Keep it work appropriate at all times. Not only in like the websites that you're visiting, that should be able to go without saying, but also in the way that you're talking about the company or the structure of things that are going on. If you have come out of the meeting and you immediately go to IM to badmouth the boss, okay, somebody has access to that.
Yep. It's recorded.
It's got to go through a server. You know, the IT team, they have access to these things. So to just kind of just be aware. Just be aware.
It makes me think of like what you've heard with like the cancel culture and stuff, the deleted tweets and the deleted posts and stuff of that nature. It's like they went out there and they said something that was totally uncalled for or questionable at that minimum. And they had second thoughts about it and they went over there and deleted it. And maybe it was only up for like a minute or an hour or whatever nature, but it was out there and people still have access to it. And the people who know how to get access to it find it. And they're like, did you see what so-and-so just posted? And then they put it up there. And it doesn't matter if they took it down. It doesn't matter. It was said, it was out there, and now it lives forever in the interwebs. So be cognizant of that. Be cognizant of what you're doing on work computers. Be cognizant of that stuff. Don't go visit websites you shouldn't be on, but also don't do personal stuff on your work computer. I think a lot of people end up doing that. Shopping on Amazon. Going, Googling weird things that are going on in their lives or whatever, or interests or something of that nature. Don't do that on your work computer. There's going to be time for you to do that. That went in. That's when you're at home and on your computer and not working.
Or if you take a break and you're on your phone, like, fair enough, but keep it to the break time as well.
Right.
And if your bill is being paid by your company, they have access to all of that again still. So if this is something where, and it might not even be related to you, what if somebody sues the company? Now, all of the company's emails and text messages and IMs are now there for all the lawyers to see. What a weird scenario to find out that that's how your boss is going to find out that you hated the thing that they said at that meeting that one time.
Do you know that Cisco has always been unhappy? It's just facade. You should read what he wrote.
That brings us to the last thing on the list, number 10. You are in charge.
Yes.
There are some bosses who are going to have very much that my way or the highway kind of mentality, but in general, you get to determine the trajectory of your career.
Right.
That's not something that someone else is going to be able to pick for you. They might be able to control where you can go within that company.
Right.
But when it comes to your career, if you become the guy that's just going to settle for whatever's in front of you and is just going to stay at that job for far longer than you should, ultimately that's on you. No one else is going to tell you that you need to move on and look elsewhere unless, the company goes under and then they get that kick in the pants.
So the first company I was at, IT-wise, I had been there for almost 5 years, not quite, and they brought in a new VP, and he had no clue what a database developer was. And there was 2 of us, and there were 16 front-end developers working in a language called APL and also doing some C# stuff. And when I first started at that company, I started off as an APL developer and then got into database. And he's like, well, I don't know what you do. Why do we have 2 database developers? So that, there's 2 of us, and if one of us is out or because there's 16 other developers.
Because there's enough work to support 2 database developers?
Yeah. And there's 16 developers that we can split them in 8 and 8, 8 to 1, right? So there's enough database developers for there are developers. He's like, well, I don't know why we need to. So you used to be an APL developer. I'm putting you back as an APL developer. Well, obviously that didn't sit well with me. So instead of being a disgruntled employee, I did what was required of me at the time. And in the meantime, I said, I am not going to let you be the director and the decider of my career. And I started looking elsewhere. And then within a short amount of time, I found another position as a database developer, and I left that company and went there. And the point being is, you're going to be in situations sometimes where someone feels that they control your outcomes and your successes. And you have to realize that it is all upon you to decide if that's something you're going to allow to happen or not. That doesn't necessarily mean cause a lot of turmoil or strife within the current work environment, but that just means that it just means that you don't have to subject yourself to that, and you get to control what your trajectory is. If it's not with this company, that's fine. It can be with someone else who recognizes what you bring to the table.
And if you want to change careers, we both talked to many people about this, where as a database developer, it's kind of like, hey, there's this thing called database.
Yes.
So many people don't even know that it exists as a thing. And personally, I like the SQL language, not to get too technical, but
sure, I love it.
I like the language because it's basically English.
Yes.
With a little bit of extra, kind of like math type logic put in there. But if you can deal with logic and processing things in sentence form, that might be a good fit at the very least. I've been talking to friends and family members lately who are kind of just dissatisfied with their situation. I go, you know what? Local community college, take one class, the intro to SQL. You might find that it's really easy, and that if you've got a logical problem-solving mind, this just could be a new career for you. If you don't like the path that you're on and you feel like that's just it, here's another option. And that's just kind of one example of there's so many resources that exist these days. Just like there's YouTube channels for just about everything.
Right.
If you want to find out more about some other option, you don't even have to, as we've talked about in the past, find a mentor to go pick their brain. You can just go find it, do a quick search, and you'll find videos. You'll find how-tos. You'll find introductions to certain careers. You can just look into it. Just check it out. Look around.
What I tell people is I also promote being a SQL or a database developer in general. But I tell them, like, look, you can go survey a class. You can go to a college and say, hey, I'm thinking about taking these courses to pursue this particular career, but I want to make sure this is something that I want to do. And you can ask to survey the class where you just go in there for a couple of classes and you go, look, is this something that I'm interested in? Is this something I'm going to be okay at? And then go from there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? But like you said, maybe it's a YouTube thing. Maybe you're better at self-taught type of curriculum. Maybe that's your thing and you can do that. And there are places, and I've seen people and worked with people who did not have a college degree, but they were excellent developers and they knew how to do it.
And along those lines, there's a lot of companies will give education credit. They'll pay for your schooling if you fill out a form.
Yeah.
I got my associate's degree largely paid for by the companies that I worked for through that time because they just had a requirement that you get a certain grade level. If obviously if you fail the class, they don't want to pay for that.
Yeah.
But if you got a B or a C, they would pay, I think, 70%. And if you got an A, they'd pay 100%. So I had an incentive to work hard and get A's.
Yeah.
And they ended up paying for a lot of school. It was great, especially in this day and age where there's a lot of concern about student debt. Something else to think about is that it doesn't necessarily have to mean taking on debt to finance this.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year college and pay higher credit hour prices.
Right.
Local community colleges, trade schools, tech schools, they have these options available you don't even have to do a whole program. Taking a couple of classes might be enough to say, oh, I feel confident enough now to go pursue that entry-level position.
And you find out from them when you go to these trade schools or like little workshops, if you would, or boot camps is another one that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Find out who they work with. What kind of companies do they work with? Because a lot of them do. A lot of them is like their curriculum is based off of a certain aspect of the technical world's needs. And so we teach those things. And these are what we focus on. Enough to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. So as we stated in this episode and also in the past, you are the decider of your pathway. You get to choose what you want to subject yourself to and what you absolutely refuse to participate in. So knowing that in the workplace, know what your benefits are, know what your rights are as an employee, and exercise those when available.
Remember, your personal brand is what's going to take you throughout your life. Be positive, build, grow. You got this.
Hopefully you're going to find yourself working for a company that appreciates not only the work that you do, but the benefits that you provide. We want to thank you again for joining us on WizNugs, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to myWizNugs.com.